On my wedding day, my bride backed out at the altar, declaring she was in love with my stepbrother. The two of them then eloped. My response was to immediately call my childhood frenemy. On the other end of the line, Chloe Sterling's pleasant voice chimed in, "Well, this is a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure of a call from you?" I chuckled and said, "I'm getting married today." Chloe scoffed lightly, "You're getting married today, and I already sent you a gift. Don't tell me you thought my gift was too small, and you're calling just to rub it in." I laughed and replied, "I hear you're still single. Have you considered getting married today?" "I'm having a wedding, but I seem to be missing a bride." Before I could finish, I heard a loud thud from her end. Chloe's voice was sharp as she asked, her brow likely furrowed, "Ethan Carter, are you serious?" I nodded. "When have I ever lied to you?" Chloe was silent for a moment, then she suddenly laughed. "Ethan Carter, do you know what the consequences are if I show up? From then on, you and I will be spending our days doing nothing but eating, sleeping, and, well, you know." I understood exactly what she meant, and a smile I couldn't contain spread across my face. "I'll give you half an hour," I said. After hanging up, my best friend, Leo, came over and patted my shoulder comfortingly. "You know, Chloe's actually a great choice." I smiled and nodded. "I know. I didn't choose Chloe because I had no other options. We had been classmates since elementary school. We were desk mates for 3 years in middle school and 2 years in high school, 5 years in total, and we spent nearly every single day at each other's throats. Back then, I never understood why this woman seemed to love opposing me at every turn. It wasn't until the car accident, when I saw Chloe's figure lunging toward me without a second thought for her own safety, that I finally understood. A knock on the door interrupted my trip down memory lane. The officiant's voice came through, "Mr. Carter, is the bride ready? The ceremony is about to begin." I smiled and replied to the officiant, "She'll be right out." I had complete faith that Chloe was a woman of her word. 20 minutes later, Chloe appeared at the doorway. I stared at her, astonished. She was dressed in a stunning couture gown, so exquisitely put together down to the last strand of hair that it was hard not to suspect she had been prepared for this all along. The only ordinary thing was the watch on her wrist. I remembered it was the birthday gift I gave her in our junior year of high school. I never imagined she still wore it. Seeing the stunned admiration in my eyes, she raised an eyebrow in satisfaction. "So, Wendy Albright runs off and your first thought is to call me? Have you been secretly lusting after me all this time, just waiting for this day?" I grinned confidently. "Chloe Sterling, I'm not a bad catch myself. You showing up today means you should be thanking me for curing your supposed androphobia." Chloe looked like she was about to laugh out of sheer exasperation. "What, androphobia? You're the one who started that rumor. Remember, growing up, she had perfect grades and was incredibly popular, the resident genius and campus queen wherever she went. Countless guys had crushes on her back in school. After she played a prank on me one time, I retaliated by spreading a rumor that Chloe had androphobia, which was so effective she'd never had a serious relationship, or even held a guy's hand." Chloe frowned. "Do you have any idea how many potential dates that rumor scared away?" I raised an eyebrow. "Well, I'm compensating you with a husband now. You get to skip the whole dating phase." Chloe placed a finger on her lips and let out a soft laugh. "Sounds like a good deal." Just then, the officiant's voice urged us, "The bride and groom, the ceremony is about to begin." I extended my right arm, and Chloe naturally took it. Her slender hand held my elbow firmly, and my anxious heart gradually began to calm. Chloe looked at me and asked, "You swapped out the bride at the last minute. Is your father going to be okay with this?" I put on a confident expression. "Once I'm married, I get 15% of Grandpa's shares. If you marry me, you'll get 10% of the shares, and what's yours is mine. That will make me the most powerful person in the Carter family." Chloe looked at my confident smile and, for a moment, she saw the boy from our youth who never admitted defeat. Still, it was a good thing Wendy had run off. It meant all her own scheming hadn't been in vain. Otherwise, she never would have gotten her chance. When it was time for the bride and groom to make their entrance, the sight of a completely different bride caused the faces of both families' elders to change drastically. Mrs. Albright, Wendy's grandmother, was especially shocked, and Wendy's mother was stunned. She immediately tried calling Wendy, but the line was constantly busy. She couldn't get through. Wendy's mother had no choice but to call her assistant, who informed her that Wendy wasn't at the wedding because of Jason Vance. Her face turned pale, and her lips trembled with anger. As the new couple was about to exchange rings, Mrs. Albright asked her daughter-in-law in a low, heavy voice, "Have you reached your daughter?" Wendy's mother lowered her head and mumbled, "She's not coming." Maya Albright, who had been focused on recording a video, froze for a second before it dawned on her. My sister bailed on her own wedding? Seriously? That's insane. After learning what had happened, Mrs. Albright was stunned. Her good upbringing forced her to hold back her anger, but her brow was tightly furrowed as a storm of emotions crossed her face, finally settling on a look of deep regret as she gazed at me. She had always treated me like her own grandson and had hoped the Albright and Carter families could become one, never imagining things would turn out this way. Maya looked panicked. Grandma, what do we do now? Ethan's marrying someone else. He's not going to be my brother-in-law anymore. Mrs. Albright sighed in resignation. No matter what, today is Ethan's wedding. We have to stay until the end. We can't let him be humiliated. On the stage, the new couple was exchanging rings. I held Chloe's finger, and she looked at me with a smile playing on her lips. Ethan, I don't have parents or annoying relatives. Marrying me will save you a lot of trouble. But I have to ask you one last time, are you sure about this? Marriage isn't a game. I have a bad temper, and I like to pick on you. I looked at the serious expression on Chloe's face and gave her a sincere smile. Chloe, I'm serious about this. Although everyone found the last-minute bride swap unbelievable, the guests were all savvy people. They wouldn't be so tactless as to spread gossip and continued to smile, applaud, and offer their blessings to the new couple. After the ceremony, with the drama that had unfolded, I couldn't go back to the Carter family home for the time being. Just as I was about to thank Chloe, she took the initiative and led me to our new home, which turned out to be her place. She hadn't told me she'd had the house decorated the night before. Don't ask how, just assume she had calculated that Wendy wouldn't be showing up. Her once minimalist apartment had been transformed into a proper newlywed home, with celebratory decorations and balloons everywhere. I raised an eyebrow at her, my eyes filled with confusion. When did you prepare all this? Or was it ready long ago? Chloe clicked her tongue, a bright smile on her face. It's my first wedding. I couldn't let it be too shabby. I was a bit surprised. I thought Chloe was just here to play a part, but I hadn't expected her to be so serious about it, even more so than me. Thinking about it made me feel a little ashamed. Other than putting a ring on her finger, I hadn't done anything. I couldn't even provide her with a proper dowry or a new home. After changing my clothes, I came out, patted my suitcase, and asked her, "So, where am I sleeping tonight?" Chloe paused mid-sip of her milk and grinned brightly. "If my dear husband doesn't mind, we could sleep together." I frowned slightly. Two people who had been fighting since they met in middle school were now husband and wife. The feeling was quite strange. Sensing my hesitation, Chloe pointed to the room next to hers. "Your room is over there. I didn't know your preferences, so feel free to do what you want with it." Chloe added in a low voice, "Don't bother redecorating it though. You'll end up in my room eventually anyway, and my room is already decorated according to your tastes." Her voice was so soft I didn't catch it, so I asked, "What did you say?" Chloe seamlessly changed the subject. "When are we getting the marriage license?" I thought for a moment. "Tomorrow morning." Chloe clicked her tongue again, her beautiful eyes fixed on me. "Ethan, I told you. You've had your eye on me for a while, just waiting for this day." Then she asked with a light laugh, "If I'm not mistaken, Wendy should be back tomorrow. Should we go on a honeymoon?" She wanted to whisk me away before Wendy returned, leaving her to cry alone. I was about to answer, but my phone rang at an inconvenient moment. "A honeymoon will have to wait for now. Can we go after I finish the project I'm working on?" I asked, trying to negotiate. Afraid she'd be upset, I quickly added, "It should only take about 2 weeks." My pleasant tone seemed to make Chloe's spirits soar, and she immediately nodded in agreement. The next day we got up early, went to City Hall to get our marriage license, and then went our separate ways to our respective companies, as if getting the license was just another formality. After returning to the office and finalizing a plan in a meeting, I received a call from my father, Harrison Carter. He had been furious when he saw the bride had been switched at the wedding yesterday, his face falling instantly. "Even if Wendy wasn't there, you can't just marry some random person. This isn't a joke. Besides, Wendy went to see your brother. Ethan, you're the older brother. Can't you be more understanding and just wait for her?" My father was furious, but he was trying to keep his voice down. "Ethan, you think you're all grown up now, that you can act so recklessly? Have you gotten the license with Chloe Sterling yet? If not, bring her to the Carter house this afternoon." Before I could answer, my father hung up. I let out a soft chuckle. His tone was like he was interrogating a criminal. I didn't let it bother me and put my phone down, immersing myself in my work. It wasn't until my lunch break that I remembered the conversation and gave Chloe a call. At that time, Chloe had also just finished a meeting. Her best friend, Sarah, walked into Chloe's office humming a tune and carrying 2 lunch boxes. Sarah smiled and said, Chloe, coming to work on your first day as a married woman? Aren't you afraid your new husband will be upset? Sarah recalled how after the Carter family announced my wedding to Wendy, Chloe had spent all her time at bars, nearly drinking herself into a stupor. She had even teased Chloe back then about her obvious crush and her reluctance to act on it. But yesterday, while they were at a bar, Chloe suddenly received a call from me. The noisy atmosphere went silent with just a single look from Chloe. After the call, she stood up coolly, puffed out her chest, and announced, "This lady is off to get married." She had left her friends staring at each other in disbelief. Now, Sarah patted Chloe's shoulder and laughed. "You finally got your man. Shouldn't you be nurturing the relationship? Aren't you worried that once Wendy comes to her senses, she'll snatch Ethan right back?" Chloe toyed with her phone, wondering if she should call me. Hearing Sarah's words, she smirked smugly. "My husband is very understanding. A single person like you wouldn't get it, and you can't even be jealous properly." Sarah felt like she'd just taken a direct hit. Showing off your love life was one thing, but why the personal attack? "Chloe, you ran off to get married yesterday, but did you actually get the license with him?" Sarah went in for the kill. "A marriage, is only reliable with that piece of paper." Chloe frowned slightly, as if admitting the point. Sarah, however, acted as if she'd found a weakness and taunted, "Don't be calling him husband all the time. The moment Wendy comes back, he'll be gone." Before she could finish, Sarah's eyes widened at the sight of the red booklet in Chloe's hand. She couldn't help but shout, "Holy crap, is that real?" She dashed over to Chloe, her eyes shining with excitement. "Chloe, let me see. I've never seen a marriage license before." Chloe gave her a look that screamed, "A single person like you isn't worthy," then placed the license in her desk drawer and said smugly, "You want to see one? Go get married." With that, she instructed her assistant to bring a lock and proceeded to lock the drawer right in front of Sarah. "This way, no thieves can get it." Chloe then nodded with a smile. By keeping it in her office, she could look at it whenever she wanted. Sarah was speechless. It was the first time she had ever seen a woman value a marriage license so much that she'd put it under lock and key. "You're something else. When did you get it?" Chloe glanced at her coolly. "Freshly issued this morning. It's still warm." Just then, my call came through. Sarah was about to say something else sarcastic, but she saw the lovesick expression on Chloe's face and decided it was best to keep her distance. My voice came through the phone. "Are you free this afternoon?" Chloe's eyes crinkled with a smile. "For you, I'm always free." Sarah felt her teeth ache from the sweetness. I couldn't help but facepalm. "My dad wants to see you," I said, exasperated. A corner of Chloe's mouth lifted. "A small matter. I'm not worried." I added, "Wait for me to pick you up. Make sure you eat a big lunch. Dinner tonight might not be so pleasant." Chloe replied confidently, "Ethan, have a little faith in your wife." Her response made me laugh, and the gloom in my heart lifted. After she hung up, Sarah sidled over with a gossipy look on her face, glancing at her phone. "Was that your husband?" Chloe nodded, then instructed her assistant, "Prepare some gifts for me this afternoon. I'm going to the Carter house." Sarah clapped her hands excitedly. "Chloe's making her move. Don't get nervous meeting the family. Just bring the same energy you have when you're closing a deal." Chloe raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "I don't need you to teach me that." Meanwhile, Wendy Albright woke up well past noon. When she saw the videos of my wedding that people had posted, along with my message breaking up with her, her mind went blank. She had never considered breaking up with me. She threw on her clothes, grabbed her phone, and rushed to leave. Just then, Jason Vance came in and grabbed her wrist. "Ethan doesn't want you anymore. Are you still going back to him? He can switch his bride, so why can't you switch your groom?" Wendy's beautiful eyes stared at him coldly. "Last night was a misunderstanding. You're fine now, and I need to go back and get married." As soon as she finished, Jason gritted his teeth. "You love him that much? You don't even care that I almost died." Wendy's breathing grew ragged, her voice sharp. "You have classmates and friends here. It was a minor car accident. There was no need for me to come all this way personally, but I still came, leaving Ethan behind." "Jason, what more do you want from me?" Hearing her use his full name, Jason knew she was angry. He softened his tone. "I'm sorry. I was just scared. I was afraid I was going to die without seeing you one last time. I love you so much. I was afraid." Wendy cut him off coldly. "Well, you've seen me now and I'm leaving. Let's just forget about last night. It was all a misunderstanding." After saying this, Wendy took out her phone to call me, but she couldn't get through. She had her assistant try with the same result. Wendy was furious that I had actually blocked both of their numbers. She then called my best friend, Leo, who just mocked her sarcastically before hanging up on her too. Wendy was livid, but her only option was to hurry back. At 4 in the afternoon, I pulled up in front of Chloe's office building right on time. After she got in the car, I gave her a heads up. After my mother passed away, my grandfather was the one who doted on me the most. If he gives you a hard time, please try to be patient with him. Chloe, wearing stockings, shifted her long legs toward me and adopted the look of a dutiful new wife. Honey, we're a legally married couple now. Your grandfather is my grandfather. There's no need to talk about being patient. I was touched and couldn't help but glance down for a moment. Perhaps exhausted from work, Chloe fell into a deep sleep shortly after getting in the car. I deliberately slowed down to let her rest. It wasn't until we pulled into my family's driveway that I gently shook her awake. We're here. Seeing the nervous look on Chloe's face, my lips curved into a slight smile. I got out of the car and took her hand, leading her inside. Feeling the dampness in her palm, I reassured her, we're a legally married couple. Don't be afraid. Chloe swallowed hard and patted her chest, where she had tucked a photo of our marriage license. Even though she had locked the actual document in her office, she kept the picture with her. Her rosy lips kept repeating the words, legally married. Then, she followed me into the Carter house. The living room was filled with people. My father and grandfather were there, as was Wendy's grandmother, Mrs. Albright. I was a bit surprised to see her, but I still walked over and greeted everyone one by one. Chloe followed my lead, greeting them politely. Everyone's gaze fell on our intertwined hands, and their expressions shifted. I let go of Chloe's hand and walked over to Mrs. Albright, saying with guilt, Mrs. Albright, I'm very sorry I couldn't inform you about yesterday's events in advance. Mrs. Albright's eyes held both sympathy and regret. She took my hand, her voice a mix of guilt and heartache. It's the Albright family that has wronged you, Ethan. You don't need to apologize. We are the ones at fault. I only wish for your happiness. I already know what happened yesterday. It was Wendy's fault, and I must apologize to you on her behalf. Mrs. Albright let out a deep sigh. Ethan, I won't make excuses for Wendy. I failed to raise her properly, and I'm sorry for the immense pain she has caused you. After seeing Mrs. Albright off, Chloe and I followed my grandfather into his study. My grandfather was still in good health, and his presence commanded respect without a word. His scrutinizing gaze fell upon Chloe, and he nodded calmly. You're a lot like that old fellow. Sterling Sr. was Chloe's grandfather, who had passed away when she was in middle school. My grandfather and he used to bicker constantly in their youth, but they also held a mutual respect for one another. It was a shame he passed away so early. Otherwise, the person I married would never have been Wendy in the first place. My grandfather continued, I don't care what happened in the Sterling family in the past. Let bygones be bygones. Since Ethan has married you, I hope you two will get along well. Chloe nodded obediently. Grandpa, don't worry, I've already drawn up my will. All of my assets will go to Ethan. I was taken aback by her words. My grandfather also waved his hand dismissively. That's not necessary. Chloe glanced at me, her eyes filled with a deep affection. Grandpa, Ethan is the person I love most in this world. I will do everything in my power to be good to him. Grandfather nodded and then asked a few questions about my work at the company. We finally left, hand in hand, after he took a phone call. Chloe went to the restroom and I sat down in the living room to wait. My father was in the living room watching the news. I sat across from him and managed a dry, Dad. He grunted in response, then initiated the conversation. Do you know about Jason's car accident? I nodded, my face impassive. I know. My father seemed to know the hidden details of the incident. He hesitated for a few seconds before saying, Jason's accident was quite serious. As his older sister figure, it was right for Wendy to go see him, so don't take it to heart. But you and Chloe, Ethan, are you serious about this? I felt a cold indifference inside. I knew my father had given most of his paternal love to Jason. I wasn't angry, just weary of it all. Dad, in my eyes, marriage is not a game. My meaning was clear. I was serious. My father was inevitably reminded of his own marriage. He carefully studied my cold expression and tried to justify himself. Ethan, your mother and I cut him off, my expression calm and my eyes showing no emotion. After Mom passed away, I let it go. Dad, a woman shouldn't have to pay for the mistakes you made. Mom's death had a lot to do with you. You are still my father, but you are no longer the father I respect most. You lost that right when you chose to betray Mom and me. My father seemed to feel a sense of powerlessness in front of me and decided to say no more. Fortunately, the housekeeper announced that dinner was ready shortly after. By the time we finished eating and left, the sky had already turned dark. I glanced at the quiet Chloe in the car and couldn't help but ask, "You seem happy. Is it just because Grandpa didn't scold you?" Chloe, despite having no scandals to her name, had an unconventional way of doing things, so it would have been reasonable for my grandfather to disapprove of her. A faint smile danced in Chloe's eyes as she curved her lips. "I only tell my dear husband," I chuckled. "Am I not your legal husband?" Chloe replied calmly, "You're missing the dear part." I was a little speechless and raised an eyebrow. "Chloe, I'm driving. I can't focus with you staring at me like that." Chloe's face flushed and she added, "Then we'll make up for that dear part when we get home." Before she could finish her sentence, I suddenly slammed on the brakes. I looked up and saw a woman standing in the headlights, and my temple throbbed. I glanced at Chloe, who turned her head and said calmly, "You can go if you want to." I gently squeezed her cheek and said in a soft tone, "I'm just going to make things clear with her. I'll be right back, okay?" Her only response was a soft huff. I opened the door and got out. Wendy rushed over, grabbing my arm with red-rimmed eyes. "Ethan, I never agreed to break up." The autumn night air was cool. I watched her quietly, feeling no anger. It had only been 2 days, but the always immaculate Wendy looked somewhat disheveled. Wendy sighed. "Ethan, don't use an innocent person to make me angry." I frowned and forcefully shook off her hand. "Wendy, I'm not like you, wanting to have your cake and eat it too. The moment you chose to go to Jason, we were over. You could have just told me. I could have notified the guests overnight that the wedding was postponed, but you didn't. You threw the Carter family's reputation and my own on the ground for you to trample on." Wendy froze, then tried to explain. "Jason is your brother. He was in a car accident." I almost laughed in exasperation. "Wendy, don't forget Jason's friends and classmates were all there. It wasn't necessary for you to go. Are you a doctor? In what capacity did you go? As his ex-girlfriend? Or as his future sister-in-law?" Seeing the stunned look on Wendy's face brought me a sliver of satisfaction. "You know exactly how Jason became my brother. I don't hate him, but I will never accept someone who was responsible for my mother's death." Wendy mumbled softly, "His mother didn't kill your aunt." I paused for a second, then started to laugh, but there was no warmth in it. "So that's what you've always thought. You're just like my father. You and I are not on the same path, and we were never destined to be together. I firmly believe my mother's death is connected to them. Since you chose to be with me, you should have respected my feelings, not gotten entangled with him at such a crucial time. Wendy, you are not irreplaceable to me." The phrase "not irreplaceable" hit Wendy like a physical blow. Her heart felt like a hollow cavern with wind howling through it, causing an intense pain. Her lips trembled. "Ethan, you've misunderstood. I was wrong in this. I looked at her coldly. "Wendy, you've had a smooth life and never learned how to say no to people. You're too soft-hearted. To put it bluntly, you're a people-pleaser who tries to be everything to everyone, and I don't need that." Tears streamed down Wendy's face. "Ethan, I love you. I was truly wrong about this. I shouldn't have left without telling you. Come with me now. Let's go back and get married." I looked at her dispassionately, as if seeing straight into her soul. "Wendy, you will never understand the depth of the pain you've caused me. I could accept you being with Jason, but I cannot accept you preparing to marry me while still being unable to let him go. How can one heart hold two people? It's truly disgusting." Chloe's voice came from behind me. "You were the one who gave up on Ethan, so you have to accept that he's not going to wait for you." She walked quickly to my side, openly took my arm, and looked at Wendy with a defiant expression. Wendy stared at Chloe with a dark expression, her eyebrows knitted together. "Chloe Sterling, you took advantage of the situation. How dare you criticize me?" Chloe's eyes turned cold as she scoffed. "Speaking of taking advantage, you're the one who created this opportunity for me. I should probably thank you." A challenging glint appeared in Chloe's eyes, and the atmosphere instantly grew tense. A headache was starting to form. I took Chloe's hand, interlaced our fingers, and said, looking down, "Let's go home. I'm getting tired." Chloe tilted her head slightly, shot a mocking smile at Wendy, and then helped me into the passenger seat. With the posture of a victor, Chloe walked past Wendy with her head held high. Wendy grew desperate. She rushed to the passenger side window, frowned, and said in a low voice, "Ethan, think carefully. If you leave with her now, we are completely over." I closed the window without a change in my expression. "Let's go home." Wendy couldn't believe that this one mistake had cost her the man she loved most. Watching the car's taillights disappear into the distance, she collapsed onto the curb, her heart feeling completely hollowed out. Chloe and I had a silent agreement not to bring up Wendy. I had been living on my own for a long time. I learned to cook back when money was tight, Later, I found the process of cooking to be therapeutic and made a habit of it. By the time Chloe woke up, I had already finished my morning run and prepared breakfast. Looking at the spread on the table, Chloe, who usually skipped breakfast, actually sat down and slowly enjoyed the meal with me. A couple of times, Chloe woke up late and was disappointed to see an empty dining table, assuming I hadn't made her anything. But when she got in the car, I handed her a small, cute thermos. She blinked her beautiful, wide eyes in confusion. "What's this?" "Breakfast," I explained. The corners of Chloe's mouth lifted into a smile that was subtle but incredibly gentle. "Did my husband make this for me?" she asked, her smile casual and confident. I deliberately teased her. "It's the leftovers from this morning." Chloe was a little speechless, but getting breakfast put her in a good mood. In the elevator, she saw her assistant, Leah, eating a pastry and raised an eyebrow. Leah held up her food. "Ms. Sterling, want some breakfast?" Chloe chuckled, holding up the thermos. "No thanks. My husband made me a special breakfast." Hearing this, Leah immediately started flattering her. "You're amazing, Miss Sterling. You've only been married a few days and you've already got Mr. Carter wrapped around your finger." After finishing her own breakfast, she followed Chloe into the office. When she saw Chloe unpack the meal I had made, Leah shed tears of envy, suddenly feeling like the pastry she had just eaten was garbage. She quickly snapped a photo and sent it to Sarah. Sarah called immediately. "Chloe, can I try some of your husband's cooking?" Chloe burst out laughing. "You want some? Go find your own husband." Sarah was exasperated. "Is having a husband such a big deal? Just a few days ago, you were single just like me." Chloe replied happily, "Having a husband really is a big deal. The night we returned from the Carter house, my grandfather gave me 15% of the company's shares, gave Chloe 10%, and left 5% for Jason. Over the next 2 days, I sorted out the share transfer documents and gave Chloe her portion. She refused it and handed it back to me. I was surprised. "Grandpa gave this to you. Why won't you take it?" Chloe leaned back on the sofa in a lazy posture and said with a smile, "I'm your wife. Didn't you say so yourself? What's mine is yours. Here, it's all for you." I explained, embarrassed. "I was just kidding that day." Chloe's smile faded. "I'm serious. Now that we're married, I have no intention of ever getting a divorce. Forget these shares. I'd give you my entire company without a second thought." I looked at her with a wry smile. "Chloe, have you ever regretted being with me? I'm a bit boring and not very romantic." Chloe chuckled. "It's fine. As long as I understand romance, that's enough. Not only do I get it, I can teach you." I didn't say anything more and simply handed the shares back to her. As I was leaving the office and heading to my car, I ran into Jason Vance waiting for me in the parking garage. He was in a wheelchair, his face a little pale, but he managed a strained smile. I frowned, looking him over. "Weren't you in a car accident? Shouldn't Jason be in the hospital? Why was he back?" Jason smiled. "I heard you and Wendy broke up. I was afraid you might have misunderstood, so I came back specifically to explain." The way he phrased it made it sound like I was being unreasonable. I let out a soft laugh, leaned against my car door, and said coolly, "You have 5 minutes." Jason was taken aback. He had only made a casual offer, not expecting me to actually listen. "Wendy and I did have a bit of a thing before. We had a falling out, and when she confessed to you, she was really just using you as a substitute for me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gotten involved with her in the first place. But this accident was unexpected, and in my panic, I couldn't find anyone else. So I'm sorry. I didn't know she was about to marry you." I watched his performance with indifference and retorted, "You say Wendy used me as a substitute. Does she know that?" Hearing this, Jason's expression changed, and he quickly shifted the topic. "I didn't know things would turn out this way. Can you forgive Wendy? It hurts me to see her so sad." I frowned, my voice cold. "Jason, you and I are not that close. I don't care about the mess between you and Wendy. In what capacity are you asking me to forgive her? As the son of a mistress?" Jason's face went white. He probably hadn't expected me to be so blunt. He lowered his head, gritted his teeth, and said, "I know I can't calm your anger, but I'll do whatever you want." I looked down at him, my voice devoid of warmth. "Does that include dying?" Just then, Wendy's voice came from behind. "Ethan." I rubbed my temples, a headache blooming. As I looked up, I caught a faint smile on Jason's lips. I felt a wave of exasperation. After all these years, he was still playing these manipulative games. Wendy rushed over, and a flash of annoyance crossed her eyes when she saw Jason was also there. She ignored him and turned to me, her gaze intense but her tone cautious. "Ethan, can I treat you to dinner?" After she went home that night, She had been scolded by both her grandmother and mother, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. I let out a derisive laugh, turned, opened my car door, and then closed it in one smooth motion, never once looking at her. Wendy frowned and started to follow, but Jason called out to her. Ethan has made up his mind. He's not coming back. You should give up. Wendy didn't turn around, pausing for a few seconds before saying, when you had your accident, I chose to go see you not because I couldn't let you go, but because I wanted to make a clean break. But I never expected you to scheme against me to put that in my drink. Jason grew anxious and quickly explained, I really didn't know you were going to marry him. Wendy turned back with a cold smile. You didn't know? I asked my assistant to pass a message to Ethan. Why did you stop her? Jason was speechless, a pained expression on his face. Wendy gritted her teeth. Ethan was right. It was my indecisiveness that gave you an opening. You always said Ethan was cold to you, that he bullied you, but was that really the truth? I won't judge your family's issues, but you shouldn't have schemed against Ethan. He's your brother, and he was supposed to be my husband. Wendy shook her head, her deep eyes filled with helplessness and regret. Seeing us end up like this, are you satisfied now? Jason gripped the arms of his wheelchair and looked up at the sky, but he remained silent. On the 4th day of our marriage, Chloe had to go on a business trip. I helped her pack her suitcase. Although we didn't share a bedroom, the decor in both rooms was quite similar. Perhaps because we were so used to being friends as kids, suddenly being married felt a bit strange. But I knew that as we spent more time together, we would eventually end up in the same bed. When I knocked on her door, Chloe was in the middle of a shower and answered with only a towel wrapped around her. My gaze flickered, and I couldn't stop my eyes from drifting downward. Chloe leaned against the doorframe and asked with a faint smile, What's up? My cheeks flushed, and I blurted out, Hungry. Chloe followed my gaze, then lowered her voice. Are you sure that's the kind of hungry you mean? It was a moment of pure social death. I quickly turned around and mumbled, I came to ask if you were hungry. Chloe deliberately teased me. I got hungry the moment you showed up. I shot her an exasperated look. Be serious. What do you want to eat? Chloe stood up straight, her eyes full of amusement. Can I eat you? Her words left me speechless. I blushed, turned, and walked away. Eat nothing. Behind me, I heard Chloe's bell-like laughter, each note landing perfectly on my heart, making my cheeks burn as I rushed into the kitchen. After Chloe finished getting ready, she came to the kitchen just as I was bringing out a bowl of tomato and egg noodles. The golden yellow eggs covered the white noodles, sprinkled with a few lonely green onions. Her appetite piqued. Chloe took the chopsticks and started eating. She remembered her junior year of high school, when she had run away from home and I had found her and brought her to my place. I had made her tomato and egg noodles then. After I left, she had tried countless noodle shops, but none could replicate that taste. Chloe's grip on her chopsticks tightened, and she quickly finished the bowl in front of her. Chloe left in the middle of the night. When I woke up the next morning, I found a note from her on the dining table downstairs. Her handwriting was as elegant as it had been in high school. Away on business for a week. Don't miss me too much, but if you really can't help it, give me a call. I'm available 24/7 to chat and eat with you. After finishing breakfast, I quickly got ready and headed to the office. After work, I got a call from my good friend Leo, asking me to dinner. When I arrived at the restaurant and sat down across from him, I saw his long face and teased, You invited me to dinner, so why the sour expression? Leo hesitated for a moment before taking out a photo. He said cautiously, Ethan, don't get angry when you see this. I glanced at it. It was an intimate photo of Wendy and Jason. In the picture, Jason seemed to have fallen, and Wendy was helping him back into his wheelchair. Jason used to be a moderately famous singer with a decent fan base. When a photo like this surfaced, the media naturally speculated that the two had finally decided to go public with their relationship. I smiled, handed the photo back, and said nonchalantly, What's there for me to be angry about? I'm married now. Leo smiled, satisfied. Ethan, how is Chloe treating you? You two were always at odds in school. Actually, Chloe is a really good person. If it weren't for that incident that happened to her, Wendy would have never even been in the picture. The mention of Wendy filled Leo with anger. I smiled and said, All right, calm down. Let's eat first. After dinner, I looked at Leo and saw him staring off into the distance. I followed his gaze and saw a familiar car parked by the roadside. Jason was sitting in his wheelchair on the curb, apparently talking to someone inside the car. Leo frowned, unable to hide the disgust in his eyes. Isn't Jason supposed to be in the hospital? Why is he wheeling himself all over town? You don't think he's faking it, do you? Seeing Leo roll up his sleeves as if to start a fight, I quickly stopped him. Let's go. Whether he's faking it or not isn't our concern. My words were ambiguous. The streetlights were dim, but from about 20 feet away, you could still make out who was in the car. Leo scoffed. True. Someone else is clearly concerned about him. Our voices were a bit loud, and the person in the car heard us and looked up. When she saw me, her smile froze. Wendy's hand trembled as she quickly pushed open the car door and headed in my direction. Ethan, Wendy called out to me. I didn't turn back, but Wendy was persistent. She weaved through traffic, panting as she rushed up to me. Ethan, Ethan. Leo gave me a worried glance, but I offered him a small smile to reassure him. Ethan, let me explain, Wendy said, her intense gaze fixed on me. I looked past her, calmly meeting the mournful eyes of Jason across the street. I smiled faintly. There's no need. My cold attitude seemed to daze Wendy. When we were dating, I wasn't overly effusive, but I was never as frigid as I was now, as if a vast chasm had opened between us. Ethan, Wendy's lips trembled as if she had more to say. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a voice message from Chloe. I meant to convert it to text, but my hand slipped and I accidentally played it out loud. I've been on the ground for 17 hours without a single hello. Am I just a use and toss kind of girl to you? Her teasing, slightly resentful laughter filled the air, and my face grew warm. What she was saying could easily be misunderstood. Leo was looking at me with a mischievous grin. Wendy's face changed drastically. Ethan, you and Chloe, she asked in disbelief. I answered without batting an eye. We are legally married. The subtext was that even if something had happened between us, it would have been perfectly natural. A wave of bitterness washed over Wendy, and the pain and regret in her eyes were impossible to hide. She looked like she wanted to say more, but Chloe's call came through at that moment. I glanced at Leo and walked a short distance away to answer. Although Chloe and I were married, we had spent the first few days of our marriage pleasantly, mostly doing our own things. I was a little surprised to get a call from her. Chloe's casual voice came through the line. Ethan, have you found someone new and forgotten about your wife already? My heart skipped a beat, and I replied softly, my face flushing. What are you talking about? There was a 2-second silence on Chloe's end before she dropped a bombshell. Did I wear you out last night? Suddenly, I heard Leo burst into laughter behind me, and I felt utterly mortified. I swore to myself that I would never again answer Chloe's calls in front of other people. That woman had no filter. We hadn't done anything last night except for me making her some noodles. The way she said it made it sound like we had engaged in some exclusive VIP-only activity. I patiently explained, I just made you noodles last night, don't talk nonsense. Aren't you on a business trip? Chloe replied with a soft, ahem. Just as I was about to say more, I heard Wendy shouting, Ethan, Ethan, in the background. Chloe's tone shifted slightly. Are you out alone this late? I glanced at Leo and said, Leo and I just finished dinner. Chloe chuckled. Wendy really can't keep it together, can she? Can't even keep an eye on her own man this late at night. I grumbled to myself, how would you know what she can or can't do? As if she could read my mind, Chloe whispered, I don't know about her, but as for me, you'll have to be the one to find out. My face turned completely red, and my tongue felt tied. I had no idea what to say. Sensing my awkwardness, Chloe laughed. I'll stop teasing you. I have to go, I have a meeting soon. You should head home early. I agreed and hung up the phone. Wendy rushed up to me, her face etched with pain. Ethan, you haven't actually fallen for her, have you? Then what were the last 2 years we spent together? I was stunned for a moment, not expecting her to play the victim. I frowned, staring at her with a stern tone. When you chose to abandon me and humiliate me, did you ever stop to think what our 2 years meant? Wendy's face turned pale, her voice low and her entire demeanor defeated. Ethan, I'm sorry. I didn't know things would turn out this way. I put my phone away and looked at Jason, who was biting his lip. I curved my own lips into an unreadable smile. Wendy, I doubt you ever loved me that much. Otherwise, you wouldn't have wavered between Jason and me. My face was expressionless, and though my voice was soft, it carried a sense of finality. To be honest, when my grandfather arranged our marriage, I didn't refuse because I thought you were a decent person. But looking at it now, you can't even compare to a single strand of Chloe's hair. Please stay away from me. The sight of you truly disgusts me. Wendy pressed her lips together, silent, her heart feeling as if it had been slashed open with a knife, leaving it empty and bleeding. Ethan, is there no chance for us? Not even one more chance, is there? She asked in a dejected tone, not daring to lift her head or look into my eyes, afraid of being pushed further into despair. The proud Wendy had never shown such weakness to a man before. A flicker of mockery crossed my eyes. Wendy, you're truly pathetic right now. The moment you decided to leave after getting Jason's call, we were over. I have a wife now, and I don't want her to get the wrong idea, so you'd better stay away from me. Just then, Jason's helpless voice cried out, perhaps worried that Wendy would leave with me. He had tried to wheel himself over in a hurry, but he hit a rock, and his wheelchair tipped over, sending him sprawling into the middle of the road. Wendy looked over, and I didn't miss the flicker of pity in her eyes. I let out a scornful laugh. Leo smiled at Wendy and said, Ms. Albright, your dear brother has fallen. Aren't you going to help him up? There's a lot of traffic at this hour. It could be dangerous. Wendy tore her gaze away and said to me, I've already cut ties with him. I gave a cold oh, and turned to leave with Leo. Wendy wanted to follow, but the increasingly pitiful cries from Jason behind her made her stop in her tracks. Wendy stood there, fuming and frustrated, watching helplessly as I walked away. After saying goodbye to Leo, I went home. After a shower, I checked my phone. It was 11 o'clock. Chloe should have been done with work. Remembering her accusatory voice message from earlier, the corners of my mouth lifted into a slight smile. Chloe loved to oppose me in school, and it seemed marriage hadn't changed that. She was incorrigible. But we were married now, destined to spend the rest of our lives together, so I figured a polite check-in was in order. I sent her an iMessage. Back at the hotel? Chloe, who was in a meeting, glanced at her lit-up phone. Seeing the familiar profile picture flash on the screen, her calm heart suddenly started racing, and she quickly replied, Not yet. I sent a resigned emoji and added, Your husband is so rich, why are you working so hard? Chloe seemed surprised by my reply. Why is my husband being so nice all of a sudden? A small smile played on my lips. I'm just afraid you'll work yourself to death and I won't get to inherit your fortune. After bickering like this for a little longer, we hung up, but Chloe's enchanting laughter still echoed in my ears. Her interruption had managed to lift my spirits, which had been soured by my encounter with Wendy. After a few busy days at the office, I received a call from my father. Come home for dinner tonight. He said it like a boss giving an order to an employee, his voice devoid of any warmth. I sighed silently, already used to it. We were both his sons, yet my father's attitude towards us was worlds apart. He always felt that Jason had been wronged and wanted to compensate him doubly for it. But I hadn't had it easy either, losing my mother and having a father who was cold as ice to me. If it weren't for our blood relation, I might not even be able to call him Dad. After work, I reluctantly got in my car and drove home. I knew that even if I made excuses to delay, it would only lead to more gossip. When I arrived, I could hear my father's gentle voice from the doorway. I didn't need to guess who he was talking to. Dad, I'm planning to hold a concert next month. Jason's voice drifted out. My father frowned. Your leg hasn't even healed yet. What are you thinking, holding a concert? The entertainment industry is tough. Your brother is managing the company well. Once your leg is better, you should go work with him at the company. Dad, Jason and I exclaimed in unison. My father and Jason turned to see me. A flicker of awkwardness crossed my father's face, but it quickly vanished. Ethan, as the older brother, it's your duty to look out for Jason. My face was blank as I stated the facts. His professional background doesn't align with the company's needs. He's not a good fit. My father's face darkened with displeasure. Jason is your brother. The entertainment industry is a corrupt place, and his personality isn't suited for it. I looked at my father with a faint smile. When I first took over the company, the old foxes were ready to eat me alive, but I survived. He made his choice and he should see it through. We're all adults here. We have to be responsible for our own decisions. My words were harsh, and Jason looked embarrassed. He looked up at me and explained, Brother, don't be angry. Dad is just worried about me. I'm not interested in the company. I'm happy just being a singer. I chuckled. I'm not your brother. You went abroad to study for a year and came back with nothing to show for it except a scandal to get attention. Jason, is this the result of your studies abroad? At my words, the color drained from Jason's face. My father's face hardened as he scolded me. Ethan, how can you talk to your brother like that? He's still sick. I strode to the bottom of the stairs and retorted, if he's a patient, he should be in the hospital. I didn't ask him to come home. For Grandpa's sake, I'm already being generous by not finishing him off. With that, I ignored my father's shouts from behind me and went straight upstairs to find my grandfather. During dinner, my father brought up the idea of Jason joining the company again, wanting to gauge our grandfather's opinion. Although he was my grandfather's son, he had never achieved much at the company. A few years ago, the incident where Jason and his mother showed up at our door had created a rift between him and my grandfather. The old man looked at Jason with a blank expression. Jason, what are your thoughts? Jason's fingers tightened around his chopsticks. He forced a smile. Dad is just worried I'll be taken advantage of, but I have Wendy to look after me, so I should be fine continuing my singing career. Besides, I have a lot of fans. It would be irresponsible to them to just quit. My grandfather gave a non-committal MHM and said, "Since you have no intention of doing so, let's not bring this up again." His words completely shut down my father's plan, and my father's face grew dark. After dinner, he stopped me as I was about to leave, and we went out to the yard to talk. My father got straight to the point. "I know your grandfather has always favored you and gave you more shares. You can see that without the family's protection, Jason's life will be very difficult. Most of the company's shares are in your hands now. You should give some to Jason." His tone wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. I wasn't surprised. I had been mentally preparing for this since he first brought it up. My gaze was steady as I said, word by word, "I don't owe Jason anything. Why should I give him what's mine? Ethan, Jason doesn't have a mother. He only has me." Seeing my father try to play the sympathy card, I paused, then let out a scornful laugh. "I don't have a mother either. Have you forgotten how my mother died? I will never forgive him for that." My father looked helpless and said flatly, "Your mother and I had an arranged marriage. I won't comment on the feelings of our parents' generation." I could only reply calmly, "You have your choices and I have my ways of handling things." My father's gaze was sharp, his tone hostile. "You look down on him that much? He's your brother. It's only right that he gets some of the assets." I chuckled, leaning casually against a lamppost, a mocking smile in my deep eyes. "You have assets too. If you really feel so sorry for him, you're free to transfer your shares to him. I have no objection." Hearing this, my father's tone grew stern. "Ethan Carter, you won't listen to a word I say anymore, will you?" My expression turned icy. "I don't want to completely tear away the last shred of decency between us. If you continue to insist, you might want to consider the consequences." My words carried a heavy threat, and my father understood it. His gaze toward me grew cold. "Ethan, I am talking to you now as your father. If you're unwilling, then tomorrow at the company, in front of the shareholders, I won't be speaking to you in such a pleasant tone." My father's meaning was clear. Either I give him the shares tonight, or I give them to him tomorrow in front of everyone. The next day, when I arrived at the office, my assistant, Ms. Davis, rushed over and handed me the files for the meeting. She looked hesitant to speak, her eyes darting around nervously. I glanced through the documents, noticing her anxious expression. "Is there something else?" Ms. Davis said worriedly, "Mr. Carter, this morning I saw your father meeting with some of the other managers. It seemed like they were discussing something about you." I raised an eyebrow with a cynical smile, closed the file, and stood up briskly. I would deal with whatever came my way. What was there to be afraid of? When I entered the conference room, the old-timers immediately fell silent, and the atmosphere became tense. I had my assistant give her report, and when she was done, I asked, "Does anyone have any objections?" My father was the first to speak up. "Mr. Carter, wasn't the East Side property supposed to be a joint project with Halim Corp? Why was it suddenly given to Chloe Sterling?" Everyone in the room was aware of my relationship with Chloe. I looked coldly at my father, who had initiated the attack, and smiled. "Are you not aware, Mr. Carter? Halim Corp was recently involved in a scandal. It would be inappropriate to entrust such a large project like the East Side development to them. Giving it to Sterling Corp might also seem inappropriate, but Chloe's company is giving us an 8% rebate." My statement silenced everyone in the room. Furthermore, Sterling Corp won this partnership through a fair bidding process. I swept my cold gaze across everyone's faces. There is no possibility of overturning this. If there are no further objections, this meeting is adjourned. I finished speaking decisively and turned to leave, but my father suddenly stood up. He knew the consequences of his actions, but he was also unwilling to let Jason feel wronged. My father stared at my back with a heavy gaze and said in a cold voice, "Mr. Carter, you are still too young and too decisive in your actions. You need more experience. Several of the shareholders and I have agreed that you should release some of your shares to create a balance of power." My hands, hanging at my sides, clenched into fists, and my eyes stung. We were both his sons, yet my father would publicly force me to give up my shares for Jason's sake. Why should all my hard work be so easily given away to someone else? I was silent for a few seconds. When I turned back, my eyes were devoid of emotion. I asked in a businesslike tone, "Mr. Carter, are you questioning my decision?" My father's brow furrowed. He hadn't expected me to be so resilient, and a flicker of pity crossed his mind. But then he pictured poor Jason in his wheelchair, and the scales of his heart tipped back in Jason's favor. Mr. Carter is too young, and some of his decisions are too rash. This is not good for the company. I can understand his mindset. After all, he's young and has a certain drive, which is understandable. But he must remember that everyone's livelihood depends on him. If he makes one wrong move, all of our efforts will be for nothing. I suppressed my anger and replied with a grim face, "We are all in the same boat. As long as I have food to eat, I will make sure none of you go hungry. You want to take my shares and you disapprove of my methods. Does that mean you prefer Jason's indecisive style?" At my words, my father's face turned ugly. I let out a soft laugh and continued, "You're being far too arrogant, Mr. Carter. Forcing someone who knows nothing about the business into the company would be the biggest mistake of all." My father was determined to get Jason into the company, so I decided to use that to my advantage and let him be hoisted by his own petard. Seeing he couldn't pressure me, my father could only follow me, persisting, "Ethan, Jason is your brother. You should help him." I didn't break my stride as I replied coldly, "My mother only gave birth to me." I thought I had made myself clear during my last 2 visits to the Carter house. But who would have thought that the father I once respected most would go to such lengths for his mistress's son? It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt. My father followed me into my office. Seeing me open my laptop and start working, he grew agitated, rushed over, and angrily slammed it shut. "He is your brother, and he is also my son," he said, his voice filled with frustration. I looked up, my eyes slightly red, which made my father pause. With reddened eyes, I asked, "Then what about me?" I seized on his guilt. "I am your biological son too. I'm not some child you picked up off the street." My father was at a loss for words. He looked at me awkwardly, a hint of helplessness in his eyes. He sank onto the sofa, defeated, and explained with his head down, "Ethan, I wronged Jason's mother." I reacted as if I'd heard the world's biggest joke. "What nonsense are you talking about? Does that mean you did right by my mother?" In a fit of rage, I grabbed the cup from my desk and smashed it at my father's feet. The cold water soaked his pant leg. Outside, Ms. Davis saw that the situation was escalating. Her heart sank, and she quickly called Chloe's assistant. The two of them kept in touch for the sake of their bosses. Daily communication was necessary. For example, she would report key details like what I ate, if my appetite was good, or who I met to Chloe's assistant, Leah, who would then relay the information to Chloe. Of course, since I treated her well, she didn't find these tasks troublesome. This wasn't the first time I had defied my father. He shot up from the sofa, his cloudy eyes suddenly sharp and clear. He said to me, "These shares, you will give them up whether you want to or not. This is the only thing I can give to Jason. Ethan, what I owe you, I will find a way to repay." After saying this, my father hurried away as if being chased by a monster. I collapsed into my chair, completely drained of energy. I closed my eyes, and tears I couldn't hold back streamed down my face. This is the last time, I told myself. This is the last time I will tolerate this from him. My assistant waited until I had composed myself before daring to bring in a fresh cup of coffee and clean up the office. Leah walked in with lunch and saw Sarah pulling Chloe aside to discuss dinner plans. She cleared her throat softly. "Ms. Sterling." Chloe turned, raising an eyebrow at her assistant. Leah chose her words carefully. "There's trouble on Mr. Carter's end." Before Chloe could react, Sarah jumped to her feet. "What? Who dares to bully my brother-in-law?" Chloe shot her a look, covered Sarah's mouth, and then turned back to Leah, gesturing for her to continue. Leah explained, "Last night, Mr. Carter went to his family's house, and it didn't go well. Today, his father and several other shareholders are pressuring him to give up some of his shares. He and his father had a huge fight." Hearing this, Chloe's face grew serious and displeased. She frowned in thought for a few seconds, then said in a cold tone, "Book me the next flight out." Leah hesitated. "But you have an important meeting tomorrow." Chloe's tone was firm and final. "It's fine. Book me a return ticket for tomorrow as well." With that, she strode out of the room. At that moment, I had no idea that Chloe was already on her way back. I didn't want her to know about these troubles. But my father was relentless. I worked all day, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed, and even skipped dinner. When it was time to leave, I went to the parking garage and just sat in my car for a while. Staring at the empty garage, my heart felt just as vacant. If it weren't for my grandfather, I would never set foot in the Carter house again. To think my own father would push me this far, pressuring me at every turn for Jason's sake. Wasn't this just proof of his affair? If I weren't concerned about my grandfather's reputation, I would have called a group of reporters today to confront him publicly and see if he felt any shame. Just then, Wendy's voice sounded from nearby. I glanced at her wearily. Seeing her approach, I quickly tried to get into my car, but I had been sitting for too long and stood up too fast. My vision went black, my legs felt weak, and I nearly collapsed. "Ethan," Wendy cried out, running towards me in a panic. I steadied myself against the wall and snapped, "Stay back!" Wendy stopped a few steps away. "Ethan, I don't mean any harm. Let me take you home." Seeing me struggling to stand on my own, Wendy's heart ached. I leaned against the wall, catching my breath, and ignored her. After a moment, I gritted my teeth and forced myself toward my car. Wendy followed persistently, her soft voice trailing behind me. Ethan, how could Chloe let you go through this alone? Let me take you to the hospital, okay?" Her last words were a humble plea. I stopped walking, which made Wendy's heart leap with joy, thinking I was about to relent. She called my name tenderly, "Ethan." I turned back, but my eyes held none of the softness she was hoping for, only a deep, bottomless ocean of coldness. I asked with a cold laugh, "Wendy, are you incapable of understanding plain English? I don't want to see you." The smile on Wendy's face vanished instantly. She stumbled back a couple of steps in disbelief, pain slowly filling her eyes. Her eyes quickly reddened, and she bit her lip hard. "Ethan, I truly know I was wrong. What will it take for you to forgive me? Just tell me, and I'll do anything." My expression was one of utter disgust, which stopped her from taking another step toward me. With tears welling in her eyes, Wendy asked in a low voice, "Ethan, we've known each other for so many years. Are you really going to be this cruel?" I gave a casual laugh mimicking Chloe's style. "Wendy, do you know why I accepted your confession in the first place? If it wasn't for my grandfather's wishes, I would have never chosen you. The fact that you had a history with Jason was enough to disqualify you." Wendy's face fell. She seemed to remember something and stared at me with a complex mix of emotions. "Ethan, did you never love me at all?" I let out a low chuckle. "I did like you before, but that ended when you got entangled with Jason. I'm a very stubborn person. Once I've made up my mind, I don't turn back until I've hit a wall. It's true that I put aside all my reservations to be with you back then, and it's also true that I can't stand the sight of you now. If you don't want me to look at you with disgust for the rest of my life, then don't show up in front of me again. That's the only dignity I can offer you." Although Wendy wasn't directly responsible for my death in my past life, she was connected to it, and I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. Wendy's eyes were bloodshot, and she looked as if she had been gutted. She suddenly doubled over, covering her face as tears streamed through her fingers. I didn't spare her another glance, turned, and walked to my car, leaving the parking garage without looking back. Wendy stood frozen, her fists clenched so tightly that her nails dug into her palms, drawing blood that dripped onto the ground. Wendy's bloodshot eyes watched my retreating figure, a morbid smile spreading across her face. "Ethan, you can't leave me. You can only belong to me." By the time I drove home, it was already dark, and I was so exhausted all I wanted to do was sleep. I had just sat down on the sofa when a voice called out, "Honey, why are you home so late?" I was a little surprised to see Chloe suddenly appear. She walked out and came closer, and I could smell the faint, pleasant scent she wore. I looked up at her. The living room lights were off, with only the light from outside filtering in. I couldn't see her expression clearly, but I could feel a wave of anger coming from her. I asked in a low voice, "Why are you back? Wasn't your trip supposed to be for a while?" Chloe reached out and touched my cheek, her voice soft. "I was afraid someone was bullying you, so I came back to check." If I listened closely, I could hear the subtle concern in her tone. Chloe didn't say anything more. She sat down beside me and silently wrapped her arms around me. The frustration and anger that my father and Wendy had caused began to dissipate in her embrace. I smiled at her. "You must have rushed here without eating, right? What do you want for dinner?" A single smile from me was enough to break through Chloe's defenses. She had only been gone for a few days, but it felt like years. That feeling of having something back only to fear losing it again was truly agonizing. Chloe swallowed, her gaze deep and intense, and suddenly asked, "Can I eat you?" I froze, my cheeks burning. I was incredibly grateful that she couldn't see my flustered expression in the dark. When I didn't answer, Chloe's face seemed to darken. She pressed her lips together, a hint of sadness in her eyes. I suddenly mumbled under my breath, "Are you even human? All you think about is eating people instead of food." My voice was quiet, but we were close enough that she heard me. Chloe was silent for a few seconds, then let out a low, beautiful laugh. In a much better mood, she stroked my face and said softly, "All right, I'll listen to my husband. No eating people. Can we go out for dinner now? I'm exhausted after that long flight." Her tone held a rare hint of playfulness. Her words made me laugh. I patted her hand and got up to change my shoes. As we walked out the door, Chloe squeezed my hand tightly. It was a bit chilly outside, and she shivered, pulling her neck into her collar. The next second, a jacket was draped over her shoulders. Chloe turned back, her eyes filled with confusion. "You gave me your jacket. Aren't you cold?" Her eyes were so clear and pure that looking into them sent a wave of heat through me. A faint smile played on my lips. "You're a girl. You get cold more easily." My gaze then fell to her legs, and I raised an eyebrow. "If you wear a skirt in this cold weather again, I'll break your legs." Chloe looked at me and made a face. She subtly linked her arm with mine, transferring her warmth to me. After we returned from dinner, I went to the bathroom to draw a bath for Chloe, so she could soak and relieve her fatigue. I suddenly realized that Chloe hadn't brought any luggage with her, which meant she would have to leave again soon. What was the purpose of her coming back tonight? Lost in thought, I didn't notice Chloe quietly sneak up behind me. Seeing my eyes glaze over, a slight smile touched her lips. As the bathtub was about to overflow, Chloe teased, "Honey, are you trying to drown me?" I snapped back to reality, saw the full tub, and quickly turned off the water. In my haste, water from the shower head splashed onto Chloe's clothes. She was wearing a white top, which was now soaked, revealing the faint outline of what was underneath. Chloe looked at me innocently, then followed my gaze to her chest. She raised an eyebrow and said with a wicked smile, "Honey, are you planning on taking a bath with me?" My face turned impossibly red, and I covered my eyes with my hand. "Don't be shy, honey," Chloe chuckled, her voice dangerously alluring. She pulled my hand away from my face and leaned in closer, our breaths mingling. She could see the nervous expression on my face. Chloe didn't want to push me. She was willing to wait for the day I was ready. She looked at me with a mischievous grin. "Still not leaving? Are you really planning on joining me?" My face was burning, and even after I retreated to my own room, her wicked laughter echoed in my head. It had only been a few days. Why did Chloe seem so alluring all of a sudden? I pinched my cheeks and took a few deep breaths to calm myself down. My phone, lying on the side table, buzzed. I picked it up and saw a message from Leo in our group chat. "Ethan, did your dad give you trouble?" My expression darkened. I didn't want to drag my friends into my family's mess. Before I could reply, Leo continued, "Ethan, we're best friends. You have to tell us if something's wrong. I heard some rumors today. Jason is planning a concert. Is that related to this?" After some thought, I told them what my father wanted. Leo, with his hot temper, replied indignantly, "Isn't he afraid of what people will say? You're his son too." I managed a small smile and typed, "It's fine. I can handle it. I'm going to get some rest." Exhausted, I put down my phone and closed my eyes. I only meant to rest for a moment, but I ended up falling asleep. I was woken from a daze by a series of knocks on the door. Hearing Chloe's anxious voice, it took me a few seconds to come to my senses. I called out to her, "I'm fine." The sound outside stopped, and I didn't think much of it. I quickly got dressed and went to open the door, only to find Chloe still standing there. She said, looking worried, "I kept knocking, but you didn't answer." After assuring her I was fine, I asked, "You didn't bring any luggage. Does that mean you have to leave again soon?" Chloe nodded. "My flight is at 6 in the morning." Her voice was soft and intimate, as if she were whispering in my ear, making my heart tremble. I knew why Chloe had suddenly returned, and it would be a lie to say I wasn't moved. I could feel that she genuinely cared for me. I lowered my head and said softly, "Chloe, you really don't have to do this. You're so good to me, but what if you can't accept me in the end and want a divorce?" I trailed off. The truth was, I hadn't fully fallen in love with her yet. Perhaps because we were so used to being friends, we had rushed into marriage without properly dating. I was afraid of hurting her feelings, which was why I had been trying so hard to resist her advances. Hearing my words, the faint smile on Chloe's face froze. She walked over to me without a word and silently hugged me. "Ethan Carter, we are husband and wife now. I got married with no intention of ever getting a divorce." Chloe's arms around me paused, and I noticed her fingertips were trembling slightly. The corners of her lips curved upward. This was a scene I had dreamed of countless times. I blushed, feeling a little flustered. "Why don't you get some sleep? I can wake you up later." Chloe sat down on the edge of my bed and raised an eyebrow at me. "Ethan, are you in such a hurry to get rid of me?" She beckoned to me with her finger and said with a smile, "Did my dear father-in-law give you a hard time?" I knew this was what she had come to talk about. I thought for a moment and said, "I'll handle it myself." Chloe retorted, annoyed, "How are you going to handle it yourself? There's a pack of old foxes ganging up on you. They'll eat you alive." I felt Chloe was underestimating me and said smugly, I have my ways of dealing with those old foxes. Chloe chuckled. And what do you plan to do? My expression grew serious, and I pondered for a moment before saying, they want to use the shares to pressure me. I'll wait patiently and see what their next move is, then I'll counter it. You don't need to worry about me. I looked at her earnestly. You have your own things to deal with. I don't want to be a burden to you. Chloe lowered her beautiful eyes. Your problems have never been a burden to me. Chloe didn't like it when I was so polite with her. She preferred it when we bickered, just like in our school days. After talking for a while, I solemnly promised to give her daily updates, and only then did she agree to go to sleep. I set an alarm for her and then went out to the living room. When I woke up again, Chloe was already dressed and about to come downstairs. The living room light was on. She raised an eyebrow and headed toward the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, wearing an apron, busy packing an exquisite breakfast and a revitalizing drink into a thermos. Chloe leaned against the doorframe silently, her heart gradually filling with warmth. Life was unpredictable. The wish she had made as a teenager had actually come true. She once thought we would never cross paths again in this lifetime, given the vast difference in our family backgrounds. Years later, when she had the power, she didn't use it to force me, but instead took a gamble. Luckily, she had won. I finished packing the food and turned to see Chloe standing in the doorway. I shyly placed the thermos in her hands and said with a smile, eat this in the car later, and try to get some more sleep on the plane. Chloe stared at me without blinking, a smile on her lips, and asked softly, Ethan Carter, are you starting to fall for me? My gaze faltered, and I didn't know how to answer. Chloe sensed my nervousness and didn't press the issue. She smiled and said gently, thanks for the hard work, honey. I'm leaving now. I nodded quickly and saw her out. I didn't go back to sleep until I watched her car drive away. But after all that, I couldn't fall back asleep. I got up, opened my old journal, and took out a photograph. Chloe wasn't in our high school graduation picture. In our sophomore year, the Sterling family had faced a crisis, and Chloe had been forced to prop up the crumbling family business, facing her predatory relatives all by herself. All I knew was that after lying low for a few years, she had personally sent those relatives to prison. When Chloe reappeared on television, she was no longer the person I remembered. But no matter what had happened in the past, I was by her side now. The image from my past life, of her running through traffic towards me, was forever etched in my mind. The next day, perhaps buoyed by Chloe's support, I returned to the office feeling refreshed. Ms. Davis came in to bring me coffee. Recalling who she had seen on her way up, she said thoughtfully, Mr. Carter, your father and Mr. Vance were here earlier. My fingers paused on the keyboard. I looked up, my gaze calm. And Ms. Davis tried to gauge my mood and softened her tone. I heard Mr. Vance was here to drop off some tickets. I gave a slight nod and resumed typing, saying nonchalantly, let him be. Do I have any meetings this afternoon? Ms. Davis shook her head. No, but you need to visit the construction site this afternoon. I grunted in acknowledgement, took a sip of coffee and said, thanks for coming with me this afternoon. My assistant smiled and closed her folder. It's my pleasure, sir. I'll take my leave now. Later that morning, there was a knock on the door. I was busy and didn't look up, just called out, come in. Jason Vance wheeled himself in. Mr. Carter, do you have a moment to talk? I glanced past him and saw my father standing outside, his eyes full of worry as he watched Jason. I looked at my watch and said gravely, 5 minutes. Jason nodded and wheeled himself closer. Ethan, I'm not going to take the shares. You don't need to feel pressured. I stared at him, leaning back with a half smile. What's your game now? You came all this way just to tell me you don't want the shares. Jason, you play this game well. If you genuinely don't want them, why don't you tell the man standing outside? I took a sip of my coffee, not even bothering to look at Jason. I never planned on giving them to you anyway. Jason's face stiffened. Ethan, you don't have to be so hostile towards me. I have no intention of taking over the company. He paused, then continued, I plan to retire from the entertainment industry after this concert and focus on getting married. He didn't say who he was marrying, but we both knew. Jason watched my face intently, trying to catch any flicker of emotion, but I gave him nothing. I calmly continued with my work, even taking a phone call in the middle of his speech. Finally, I looked up at him and said, you don't need to tell me your plans. I'm not interested. I'm busy, you can leave now. My attitude wasn't friendly, but it wasn't entirely cold either. I was doing my best to control my emotions in front of him. Jason's lips moved slightly, and just before he left, he turned back and asked, Ethan Carter, do you really not love Wendy anymore? Lately, Jason had been following Wendy, watching her transform from a vibrant, high-spirited young woman into a pitiful drunk who spent her nights in a stupor. He had even seen her crying outside my apartment building. It would be a lie to say he wasn't envious. He had loved Wendy for years. The past incident between them had been his own careful orchestration, designed to drive me away. But when Wendy found out, she had gone straight to me without a second thought. He had never truly had Wendy, but he didn't regret it. Ethan was now determined not to look back. Wasn't he? If he was ruthless enough, he was confident he could win Wendy over. My eyes held a hint of sarcasm as I said, "Don't bother testing the waters with me. Wendy and I are over." Exposed, Jason's face paled slightly. He forced a smile and turned to leave. My father, waiting outside, saw Jason's grim expression as he came out. He frowned, walked over to push Jason's wheelchair, and asked softly, "Jason, did Ethan give you a hard time?" Jason shook his head, his voice choked with emotion. "No, Dad, I don't want the shares. Please don't bother Ethan about it anymore." My father grew angry, blaming me internally. He had specifically told me not to bully Jason, so why didn't I listen? "What did Ethan say to you?" At the question, tears welled up in Jason's eyes and streamed down his face. "Dad," he said, his eyes red, "I want to see Wendy." My father's expression became grave. "Jason, in your current state, it's not a good idea for you to see her." In other words, Wendy didn't want to see him. Jason knew this. He had only dared to follow her from a distance these past few days. But my father, feeling guilty, softened at the sight of his son's distress. "All right, I'll take you to see her." Meanwhile, Chloe returned to her hotel after her meeting. Sarah saw her come in, pushed off with her foot, and glided over on her office chair. Staring at Chloe's exhausted face, she teased, "Looks like last night's battle was intense." Her words earned her a sharp eye roll from Chloe. Undeterred, Sarah leaned in closer and whispered, "Chloe, we've been best friends for over a decade, and this is the first time I've ever seen you so worked up over a guy. Have you really fallen for Ethan?" Chloe thought she was talking nonsense and retorted, "Do I look like a player to you?" Sarah didn't answer. Among their group of friends, Chloe was hopelessly innocent. Even the seemingly demure Wendy had dated a few guys, while poor Chloe was still single in her late 20s. "I'm just curious. You rushed back so eagerly last night. Was Ethan moved by it?" Hearing this, Chloe felt a pang of disappointment. Moved? He didn't even give me a kiss. With that thought, Chloe turned to Leah and asked, "Did my dear father-in-law cause any trouble today?" Leah chose her words to please her. "He did, but when Jason Vance came out of Mr. Carter's office, he looked terrible. It seems he got completely shut down. That was unexpected." Sarah's eyes widened in confusion. "No way. Ethan seems so gentle." Chloe shot Sarah a disdainful look, as if she were hopelessly naive. "Who said Ethan has a good temper? He just can't be bothered to get angry with most people. Back in school, I argued with him all the time. Even with his sharp tongue, he was no match for me." Leah remained silent, cautiously glancing at Chloe. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. After the meeting, Chloe's mood had soured when she saw I hadn't replied to her message. Just then, her phone buzzed. She looked down and saw that I had finally responded. "Sorry, I was at the construction site and didn't see your message. Is your meeting over? Are you going to get some rest early tonight?" Seeing the message, the corners of Chloe's mouth curled up, leaving her two friends completely bewildered. Sarah tried to peek at the screen but was met with a light smack on the head from Chloe. Rubbing her head, Sarah grumbled, "Chloe, you're a grown woman. Why are you acting as shy as a teenager? You don't know anything." Chloe then replied to me, "If I could hear your voice, I wouldn't feel tired at all." Seeing her message, a small smile formed on my lips, and I picked up my phone to call her. Chloe happily took her phone and walked out of the room. Sarah called after her, "Chloe, where are you going?" Chloe smiled sweetly. "I'm not telling you." The moment she stepped out of the room, Chloe eagerly answered the call. My voice came through the phone, "Tough meeting. Remember to drink plenty of water." Chloe smiled. "Ethan, are you worried about me?" I stubbornly replied, "Of course. I'm afraid something will happen to you in a foreign city, and I won't be able to get there in time to collect the body." Chloe clicked her tongue and said with a faint smile, "My dear husband, don't worry. Even if I don't die, my fortune is still yours." I chuckled at her response. "Stop joking around. You didn't get much rest last night, so you should go to bed early tonight." Chloe agreed readily, like a schoolgirl who had just been given a treat. I then asked, "When are you coming back?" Chloe's eyes flickered with surprise, as if she suspected she had answered the wrong call. After double-checking that it was me on the other end, she asked, "Honey, do you miss me?" "However," I said, "Mrs. Albright's birthday is next week. I spoke thoughtfully, carefully listening for Chloe's reaction. Even though things with Wendy had ended this way, Mrs. Albright had always been very kind to me. A sharp pain shot through Chloe's heart, and her face paled slightly. "Do you want to go?" I explained. Mrs. Albright practically watched me grow up. She's been very good to me over the years. Chloe took a deep breath. She couldn't interfere in matters between me and Wendy, but the thought of me seeing her again made her heart ache. "Even after all this, is it still not enough?" I sensed her unhappiness and called her name softly. "Chloe." Chloe tried to make her voice sound gentle. "If you want to go, then go." But then I laughed. "I want to go with you." After hanging up, I lay on my bed. There was a new message from Chloe on my phone. It was a photo. She was curled up in bed, wearing simple pajamas with the blanket pulled up to her chin. A faint smile was on her face as she texted, "Listening to my dear husband. I'm already in bed resting." I replied with a "get some rest," put my phone aside, and opened my laptop to continue working. The East Side project couldn't officially start until Chloe returned to the office, which meant we would inevitably be seeing more of each other. However, the immediate priority was to figure out how to handle Mrs. Albright's birthday next week. I could choose not to go, but she was getting older, and each birthday was precious. Besides, she had always been good to me, and I didn't want to upset her just because of my history with Wendy. After I finished with my emails, I checked my phone. It was already 11, and Chloe had replied with a good night, and then gone silent. I knew Chloe had her little schemes. She had sent the photo hoping for a more flirtatious reaction from me. But like a typical clueless guy, I had just told her to get some rest. Chloe was probably fuming, but she quickly consoled herself. "Don't be angry, don't be angry. You chose this husband yourself." And then, while waiting for my reply, she had actually fallen asleep. The next day, I don't know what Jason said to my father, but during the morning meeting, my father found fault with everything I did. Even with my usually good temper, I found myself frowning repeatedly and eventually had to adjourn the meeting with a cold expression. At the same time, another problem arose at the company. An executive had been cooking the books and had embezzled $50 million before disappearing. I immediately reported it to the police and instructed the finance department to audit all accounts and send the results to me for review. While I was swamped with work, the Albright household was in its own state of chaos. For Mrs. Albright's birthday, Wendy wanted to use the occasion to see me and asked her sister, Maya, to send me a message insisting that I attend the party. Maya was the granddaughter of one of Mrs. Albright's close friends. Tragically, her entire family had died in an accident, leaving her as the sole survivor. She was only 5 when the Albrights took her in, and they had always treated her like their own granddaughter. Maya had always been fond of me growing up, and she was overjoyed when she found out her sister and I were together. But who could have predicted that her sister would run out on her own wedding? When Wendy made such an unreasonable request, Maya flatly refused. She had been raised by Mrs. Albright and had a strong moral compass. She stared at Wendy, her voice a mix of sorrow and anger. "Sister, Ethan is married now. Why are you still trying to bother him? When you abandoned Ethan to go to Jason, did you ever think about how he would have to face all the gossip? What's with this act of being deeply in love now? It's honestly disgusting." Wendy never thought the day would come when her own sister would call her disgusting. A bitter feeling washed over her, and pain filled her eyes. Maya, please help your sister just one more time, okay? I heard Ethan is facing pressure from all sides lately, and I'm really worried. I tried messaging him from a new account, but he somehow knew it was me and blocked it immediately. He never answers my calls. I really just want to help him. Wendy looked at Maya with pleading eyes. She had never imagined I would be so ruthless, and her heart ached with an indescribable pain. Maya looked at her sister, speechless, torn between pity and anger. Maya said with a troubled expression, "Sister, we were both raised by Grandma, but how did our personalities turn out so different? Honestly, I can't even stand this indecisive version of you. Don't even think about comparing yourself to Chloe. You're not in her league. Ethan is married now, do you understand? Legally, he is Chloe's husband, not yours." Wendy's lips trembled, her eyes filled with regret and frustration. Maya couldn't bear to watch anymore. She patted Wendy's shoulder and said, "It's all in the past. Ethan seems happy now. You shouldn't disturb him." Wendy's eyes were bloodshot as she cried out, "But Chloe isn't making him happy. I just can't accept it. It was just one mistake. Why couldn't he wait for me?" Maya looked at her, exasperated. If it weren't for their sisterly bond, she wouldn't want to deal with Wendy at all. What was this? A bad girl seeing the error of her ways and trying to win back her man? Where was this energy before? Didn't she understand that winning him back now would be an uphill battle through fire? But in the end, Maya still felt sorry for her sister. I'll try to contact Ethan. Hearing this, a faint smile appeared in Wendy's eyes. Maya, thank you. Maya glanced at her. No need to thank me. Just don't ask me to do this again. Ethan and I have a good relationship, unlike some people who stab him in the back. Muttering to herself, Maya sent me a message. Ethan, are you coming to Grandma's birthday party? Hours passed with no reply. Maya looked at her sister speechlessly and shrugged. If it were me, I wouldn't come either. Ethan definitely doesn't want to see you right now. Wendy's red eyes were glued to the screen. Suddenly, a thought struck her, and she quickly left, heading for my office. I was in the middle of reviewing the accounts when the front desk called to say that Wendy was downstairs and wanted to see me. I was mentally and physically exhausted and had no desire to see her. I said coldly, I'm not seeing her. The receptionist glanced at Wendy and added, Mr. Carter, Ms. Albright says she can help you solve your current problems. I gave a cold laugh and told the receptionist to hand the phone to Wendy. Ethan. Wendy's voice was as soft and tender as it had always been, but now, it just made me feel sick. I pressed my throbbing temple and asked in a hostile tone, what do you want? Ethan, I can help you with the shares issue, and I have people who can help with the company's accounting problems. I don't want to see you struggling like this. Please just see me once. Consider it a thank you for everything you've done for me these past 2 years. Wendy's tone was full of deep affection, and it made me want to laugh. I toyed with my pen and asked, how do you plan to help me? Wendy's voice turned serious. Jason wants shares. I'll give him my shares in Albright Industries. That way, you won't be in a difficult position. As for the accounts, I've already had someone look into it for you. I believe we'll have results soon. I wearily rubbed my temples, my voice icy. Wendy, do you really think I would still believe you now? Wendy was stunned and took a long moment to recover. I just genuinely want to help you, she said. I chuckled softly. No, thank you. I'll handle my own problems. The only reason I'm talking to you is to tell you that I already have a wife. With that, I hung up without a shred of mercy, giving Wendy no chance to reply. After putting down the phone, I had no motivation to work. I got up and paced around the office. Just then, Ms. Davis knocked and came in, placing a dessert on my desk. I asked in surprise, what's this? Ms. Davis smiled. Ms. Sterling ordered this for you. She said to have something sweet when you're in a bad mood. After Ms. Davis left, I took out the dessert, arranged it on the table, and sent a picture to Chloe. She replied quickly, feeling better? I asked, puzzled, how did you know? Do you have my office bugged? Chloe's reply came with a virtual smirk. What if I said it's a psychic connection between husband and wife? Would you believe me? I sent her an emoji, put down my phone, and started on the dessert. My mood did indeed improve. Just as I was about to focus on my work, Chloe's call came through. Guess where I am? She asked. I rested my chin on my hand, thought for a moment, and was about to answer with a smile. Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside my door. A moment later, Ms. Davis rushed in, shouting, Mr. Carter, it's terrible. Ms. Albright has gone crazy. She's forcing her way in uncontrollably. My temples throbbed. The exhaustion from days of being pressured by my father and the old guard at the company was instantly ignited by this sharp announcement, transforming into a blaze of irritation. I gripped my pen so tightly my knuckles turned white, with only one thought in my mind, her again. Before I could speak, the heavy wooden door to my office was thrown open with a deafening thud. Wendy burst in. Her usually immaculate makeup was smeared, her carefully styled hair was plastered messily to her cheeks, and her eyes were bloodshot. She had lost all semblance of her usual polished, high society look. She looked like a cornered animal, staring at me with a desperate intensity. Ethan, her voice was hoarse and trembling with despair. Why won't you see me? The shares, the company's accounting problems, I can help you with all of it. Whatever Jason wants, I'll give it to him, as long as you come back to me. I watched her coldly, my heart unmoved, feeling only a sense of pity and absurdity. Did she really think this was still the past, where a single word from her could soften my heart? She had personally trampled that affection into the mud, and now she thought she could just pick it back up. It was utterly naive. Wendy, I began slowly, my voice as cold as ice. My affairs do not require your intervention. We were over the moment you chose to go see Jason. No, it's not over, she cried, stepping forward excitedly, reaching for my hand. Ethan, I know I was wrong. I really do. Just give me one more chance. We can. Her words were cut short by a cool, familiar female voice that swept through the stagnant air of the office like a sudden breeze. Ms. Albright, I believe my husband's meaning was perfectly clear. I snapped my head up, my heart skipping a beat. There, on the visitor's sofa, a figure was seated, though I hadn't noticed her before. Her legs were crossed elegantly, and she wore a perfectly tailored black suit that made her skin look as white as snow, her presence commanding the entire room. On the face I had been thinking of day and night, there was a smirk, and her eyes, sharp as daggers, were fixed on Wendy. It was Chloe. Wasn't she still on a business trip abroad? Wendy was clearly stunned by this sudden turn of events. She stared at Chloe in disbelief, her lips trembling. What are you doing here? Chloe let out a soft laugh, stood up, and walked slowly towards us. The click of her heels on the floor sounded like it was stepping on Wendy's fragile nerves with every tap. She came to my side, naturally took my arm, and then turned her gaze back to Wendy. Her eyes held a look of condescending scrutiny mixed with a hint of pity. Why shouldn't I be here? This is my husband's office, and I am his wife. She paused, the curve of her lips deepening. On the other hand, Ms. Albright, repeatedly barging into my husband's office and harassing him seems rather undignified, doesn't it? Is this what the Albright family considers good manners? Wendy was so flustered by her words that her face turned from pale to green, and she trembled with rage. Ms. Davis, Chloe said, not even sparing Wendy another glance, addressing my assistant at the door, please call security and have them escort Ms. Albright, who is disrupting Mr. Carter's work, out of the building. From now on, do not allow any unauthorized individuals up here without my permission. Yes, Ms. Sterling, Ms. Davis replied, looking as if she had just been granted a pardon, and immediately turned to make the call. Wendy completely broke down. She looked at me, large tears welling in her eyes. Ethan, is this how you're going to treat me? You're going to let this woman humiliate me? I looked at Chloe beside me, the woman who was shielding me from the storm, and a wave of warmth washed over me, dispelling the gloom of the past few days. I took her hand, interlacing our fingers, and then looked at Wendy, my voice calm but firm. She is not this woman. She is my wife, Chloe Sterling. And you, Ms. Albright, are no longer a part of my life. Please leave. Security arrived quickly, and Wendy was forcibly removed from my office amidst her resentful sobs. As the door closed, the world was finally quiet. I turned to Chloe, 1,000 words in my heart, but all that came out was, "Why are you back?" She let go of my hand, walked over to me, and gently smoothed the furrows in my brow with her fingers. Her fingertips were cool, but they felt like they carried an electric current that instantly relaxed my tense nerves. My husband was about to be bullied into submission. If I didn't come back, was I supposed to just wait for you to hand over your kingdom? Her tone was her usual teasing one, but the deep concern in her eyes was unmistakable. This is your battlefield, and I'm here to fight with you, she said, gazing into my eyes, each word landing with solid conviction. In that moment, I no longer felt like I was fighting alone. That evening, at our home, Chloe showed me the spoils of her war. She had not only wrapped up her overseas project early, but had also mobilized all her resources. I've quietly acquired 5% of Carter Enterprises shares. Combined with the 15% Grandpa gave you and the 10% he gave me, we now hold 30%. She pushed a document in front of me, her tone as calm as if she were discussing the weather. I stared at her in shock. 30% of the shares meant we now had absolute control. And that's not all, she said, producing a recording pen. Remember that executive who embezzled $50 million? I found him. He was hiding from his debts abroad, and my people cornered him. He was more than happy to confess everything. She pressed play, and the panicked voice of the executive filled the room, followed by Jason's sinister threat. You can use this money, consider it a loan from me, but you must accuse Ethan of poor oversight at the shareholder meeting. Otherwise, I can't guarantee there won't be an accident involving your daughter studying abroad. My fists clenched instantly. So that was it. That was their real goal. And there's this, Chloe said, handing me an investigation report. I also looked into Jason's so-called serious car accident before the wedding. It was just a minor fender bender. The other driver was paid a hefty sum to keep quiet. He was acting the entire time, all to keep Wendy occupied, ruin your wedding, and make you the laughingstock of our entire social circle. The evidence was irrefutable, each piece fitting perfectly into the next. I looked at this brilliant, strategic woman before me, and my heart filled not only with gratitude but also with an indescribable sense of pride and love. We had been rivals for so many years, but it was only today that I truly understood. We were never enemies, but two sides of the same coin, perfectly made for each other. Chloe, I said, my throat tight and my voice a little hoarse. Thank you. She raised an eyebrow, her usual proud demeanor returning. Just saying thank you isn't enough. After we win this war, you'll have to compensate me properly. I took her hand, brought it to my lips for a gentle kiss, and looked at her with a soft but determined smile. All right, I'll spend a lifetime compensating you. The shareholder meeting arrived as scheduled. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense. My father, Harrison Carter, and a few of the older shareholders all wore grim expressions, clearly preparing to launch an attack on me. As expected, the moment the meeting began, my father stood up. With a pained expression, he accused me of mismanagement leading to the embezzlement of company funds and of damaging the company's stock price with my personal scandals. Finally, he formally proposed to remove me as CEO and demanded that I transfer a portion of my shares to someone more capable. The more capable person he referred to was, of course, his precious son, Jason. The other old-timers immediately chimed in with their support, and for a moment I felt like I was public enemy number one. I stared at my father's hypocritical face, the last embers of familial warmth in my heart extinguished. Just as I was about to retort, the conference room doors were pushed open. Chloe strode in on her high heels, drawing the stunned gazes of everyone present. Her legal team followed behind her, their combined presence so powerful that the entire room fell silent. Sorry I'm late. She took the empty seat beside me and gave a slight nod to the room. As a shareholder holding 10% of Carter Enterprises, I believe I have the right to attend this meeting, don't I? My father's face instantly turned ugly. What are you doing here? I'm here to ensure justice is served, of course. Chloe placed her files gently on the table, her gaze sweeping over everyone present. Mr. Carter just accused my husband of poor oversight. In that case, why don't we first listen to what really happened with that embezzled money? She pressed the play button on the recording pen, and Jason's threatening words echoed clearly in every corner of the conference room. Everyone was stunned. My father's face went from ashen to white, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. As for the so-called personal scandal, Chloe's voice grew even colder. I think everyone here would be more interested to know how certain individuals meticulously planned a fake car accident just to ruin a wedding and frame their own brother, wouldn't you? One by one, her lawyers presented the evidence on the large screen. From the hospital's diagnostic reports to the bank transfer records, Jason's scheme was laid bare for all to see. The room fell into a dead silence. The same shareholders who had been clamoring for my removal just moments ago now bowed their heads, unable to meet my gaze. Just then, the conference room doors opened again. My grandfather, leaning on his cane and supported by Leo, walked in slowly. His gaze was sharp as he surveyed the room, finally landing on my father. Harrison, you have disappointed me immensely. My grandfather's voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of 1,000 tons. Dad, my father whispered, his face ashen, as he collapsed back into his chair. My grandfather ignored him and turned to Chloe and me, a gratified smile on his face. He walked to the head of the table, rapped his knuckles on it, and announced, I came here today to declare just 3 things. First, Ethan Carter will remain the CEO of Carter Enterprises. I believe everyone here has witnessed his capability and character. Second, all of my shares in Carter Enterprises will be gifted to my granddaughter-in-law, Chloe Sterling. As of today, she will be the 2nd largest shareholder in this company. Third, my grandfather's gaze turned severe. Harrison Carter, for failing to raise your son properly and for your poor judgment, you are hereby stripped of all positions within this company, effective immediately. As for Jason Vance, a man of corrupt character and malicious intent, the Carter family has no such descendant. From this day forward, both of them are no longer associated with the Carter family in any way. My grandfather's words struck like thunder, bringing the entire farce to a definitive end. The dust settled. Jason was taken away by the police on multiple charges, including commercial blackmail and malicious framing, to await the severe punishment of the law. My father seemed to age 20 years overnight. After being expelled from the family, he became a complete recluse. When Wendy learned the whole truth, she fell gravely ill. Eventually, persuaded by her grandmother and Maya, she moved abroad, leaving the city that had brought her so much heartbreak and despair for good. As for Chloe and me, we became the power couple that everyone in the business world admired. And during our battle, Leo and Sarah also found a spark between them and eventually got together. A few years later, outside the maternity ward at a downtown hospital, I paced back and forth anxiously, my palms sweating, feeling 100 times more nervous than I had at that shareholder meeting. Leo was beside me, patting my shoulder and teasing me with a smile, but I couldn't hear a word he was saying. When the delivery room door opened, a nurse came out holding a swaddled baby and said to me with a smile, Congratulations, Mr. Carter. It's a beautiful baby girl. Mother and daughter are both doing well. In that instant, I felt my heart fill with an overwhelming sense of joy. I rushed into the room. Chloe was lying on the bed, her face a little pale, but she gave me a gentle smile when she saw me. I walked over, leaned down, and placed a reverent kiss on her sweat-dampened forehead. "You worked so hard, my love," I said, my voice choked with emotion. She smiled, tears of joy glistening in her eyes, and reached out to stroke my cheek. "Our baby, she looks just like you." I looked at her, this woman who had walked with me through the lowest point of my life and shared the pinnacle of glory with me, and my heart overflowed with endless love. I lowered my head and kissed her lips again. The kiss was gentle and lingering, encompassing our entire past and heralding our bright future. The sunlight streamed through the window, just right, and our story was only just beginning.